how to make a different letter the subject of an equation or a formula. So what do we mean by that, first of all? Okay, so what you can see with this one at the moment is that M is what we would call the subject, because M is on its own and everything else is on the other side. So in this example, it's asking us to make P the subject, which means we want to transform this, rearrange this so that we have P equals and stuff on the other side, basically. The techniques that we're going to use to do this are the same techniques that you use for solving equations. So this shouldn't be too tricky if you follow that. So we've got to try and get P all on its own. So the first thing we're going to tackle is this 3n, and to remove it we're going to minus 3n. We always do the opposite. So that means I need to do the same on the other side. Now this is, I think, where people start to get anxious, because they think, well, how do I do m minus 3n? Well, you're not actually going to do anything. It's literally just writing it. So m minus 3n is m minus 3n. And then on the other side, we're left with the 2p. Now, okay, so to remove this 2, which is multiplying the p, we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to divide by 2. Now again, this is all about just how you write these down. And so m minus 3n divided by 2 equals p. So other than when you're going to write it down on the actual dotted line for the answer, I would reverse that. So I'd say P equals m minus 3n over 2. Other than that, that is now finished because P is on its own and the other letters and numbers are on the other side. So let's do some more examples. So in this example, they've asked us to make T the subject. So we're going to start with removing the 30. It's always easier to, pretty much always easier, to remove the add-ons or the takeaways before tackling this. What I tell my students to think of is this is like holding hands, whereas this is more closely attached, a bit like having a rucksack on your back. It's quicker to let go hands and easier than it is to get the rucksack off your back. Okay, so if we do minus 30 here, we must do it there. So that means we've now got u minus 30 equals 7t. So our final move is to divide by 7 to get rid of that 7. We do that on both sides, which is not, none of this is really calculations, it's just knowing how to write the things down. So division, when we're dealing with algebra, looks like these fraction forms. So we've got u minus 30 divided by 7, and that equals t. So let's look at a few more examples. The next ones that are coming up are formulas that you might be quite familiar with and quite commonly would have to rearrange at some point. So the first one we've got up here is speed. So this one is quite a common one. So let's say we're in the situation where we know the speed and we know the distance, but what we want to work out is what the time is. And so in effect what we've got to do is rearrange this equation so that we have t as the subject. Now this is going to take a few more steps, and although I've written this like this, I'm actually going to use just s for speed from now on because it just makes life a bit easier. Now our first problem is that t is on the bottom of this fraction, which makes it quite awkward. And so what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by t on this side to get it off the bottom, and we're going to multiply by t on this side. So that means we will have s, the speed, times t, the time, equals d, the distance. So our final move now is to get rid of that s, so we've just got the t on its own. It's multiplying the t, so we're going to divide by s on both sides. So that leaves us with t on this side, and on this side we'll have d for distance divided by S for speed. Here's another common formula that you're probably aware of. So to calculate the mean, we work out the total, we add up the numbers, and then we divide by the number of them. So let's say in this situation we want to find the total. We know the mean, we know how many there were, but we need to get back to work out what the total of them were. So again, I'm going to replace this with M, this with T, and we'll use an N for here from now on in, just because it makes it easier and quicker to write down. So we're trying to get the T on its own. Let me just write that again here, because I think that might be a bit clearer. Okay, so we're trying to make T the subject. So that means we need to get rid of this N, which is dividing the T. So we're going to multiply by N on both sides, because that cancels that and leaves us with the T on this side, and then on this side we've got N, M. So in other words, in order to work out what the total is, we'd multiply the mean by the number of data items we had. Let's look at some others. So here we go. All right, so here are some more formulas. Well, at least the one on the top is probably familiar to you. I'm not going to worry too much if you don't recognize that one. That's more advanced. So here we have the formula for the area of a circle. A equals pi r squared. And we're being asked to work out what the radius is. So here we know the area. Pi is a fixed number, but we need to go work backwards and find out what r is. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the pi. So we're going to divide by pi, because currently that's multiplying the r squared. So that means we'll now have a over pi equals r squared. Okay, so we actually only want r and not r squared, so the opposite of squaring is square rooting. So we're now going to square root both sides. I'm just going to write it over here actually, because there's not a lot of room. So on this side we're literally just going to put the square root sign over everything there, and then on the other side, if we square root r squared, we're undoing the squaring, so we get r left. Here's an example where we're going to kind of need to reverse that process. So they're asking us to make the h the subject. So the big thing that we have here, first of all, is that that's being square rooted along with everything else. So to remove the square root, we're going to square both sides. So that will give us d squared equals 3h over 2. So now we're going to start to get rid of these numbers. So we'll deal with the 2 first of all. It's dividing, so we multiply. So that gives us 2d squared equals 3h. And then finally, that's 3 times h, so we're going to divide by 3 here. So we've got 2d squared divided by 3. And that equals h, which actually stands for height in this particular formula, but that doesn't matter really what the formula is. Okay, so we'll just look at 2 more, just to give you plenty of experience here. Okay, so in this first one, sorry I haven't written it down, we want A to be the subject. Okay, so we're trying to get A. So we're going to take away the 8u from both sides. So that means on this side we've got S minus 8u equals A over 4. And then to get rid of the 4, we're going to multiply both sides by 4. Now just be careful with this. So the easiest way to do this is to say it's 4 brackets S minus 8u. If you want to multiply out the brackets, that's fine. just remember and understand that you've got to multiply both parts by 4, not just the first one, and that cancels with that to leave us with a on this side. Now in this particular example we want to get t as the subject. Okay, now this has a slightly added twist because we've got t in 2 places. So in order to do this, we actually have to do some factorising first of all. So we can see that they both have t in common, so we bring that out. So t times what is 2t, t times what is at. So now we've got f equals t times brackets 2 minus a. Okay, so to get the t on its own, we're going to divide both sides by everything that's in that bracket. Okay, so again, don't think of this as scary because it's more of a writing exercise than a calculation exercise. So we've got f divided by 2 minus a, and that equals t. I've removed the brackets because now it's on its own there, it doesn't really need it. So that's how you make something, a different letter, a subject of a formula or equation.